Hi guys, Pax Europiana here. I'm rolling now into Mariupol and I want to show you some of the outskirts and how the city looks, some of the infrastructure and some of these important facilities here in the south of Ukraine. It's of course, still a very poor country, especially outside of Kiev, Odessa, Lviv and Kharkiv, and then of course the big cities are rich, but unfortunately the smaller cities at the periphery, because of this high level of centralization and of course the Soviet Union has destroyed everything and has not really built something meaningful. A little bit of energy infrastructure, a little bit of railway infrastructure, but the Soviet Union, obviously an evil empire, they have killed so many people and they have left so few relevant things in 70 years of their tragic existence. They have left a devastation, war, disaster, underdevelopment and centralization and rural poverty, and of course all this legacy of Holodomor and killings. They have left, of course, also a lot of this kind of big industrial assets, which often are a huge environmental, energy, and also social disaster. And you see, we are coming, of course, now to some of them. These are really big assets, and that's what they did in of environmental disaster. Economically, often they were never sustainable, but they are now they are. And often it's a big problem for the Ukrainian economy to export their produce, because nobody really wants to have them, because they are often produced under such terrible conditions that they don't pass any kind of export levels, and often they are subsidized via the energy system or via other ways, and that creates a lot of problems. But that's of course the southern cities, Zaporozhye, Dnipro, and also Mariupol is in a way the harbor of all these cities in the east. It's a very important strategic harbor here at the Azov Sea, at the Black Sea, at this additional sea next to the Black Sea, and it is an important industrial site. Some of it looks like that. You see what typical Soviet factory, but okay, that is of course. A lot of it was never economically meaningful, like Trepča in Kosovo. You remember that when I showed you some. I've seen all these Albanian disaster chemistry plants and the smelter plants, and I have shown you some on the videos already. And now we are coming to this big city of Mariupol. In a way, as I've said already, it's together with Kherson, but Mariupol is more the commercial port. Yeah? Of course, the biggest port on the Black Sea is Odessa, and there's also this, what is it called, the other port, I forgot now. This Odessa is the biggest, Kherson, Mariupol, and there's two other very big, Nikolaev, of course, Nikolaev, yeah. That's also a very big port at the Black Sea, and there's one more, I think, at the Dniester. I forgot now, but okay, there is a lot of that, because the wheat must be exported. Egypt is, for example, one of the biggest customers of Ukrainian wheat. Also the steel and the produce of the big Soviet legacy industry, also of the weapons, and this must all be exported, and it goes via the southern harbors to the world markets. And insofar, Professor Aslund is right. There is of course a large dependencies. Sartana. I'm now in Sartana. That is not still Mariupol. I still have to go a bit. I'm without internet here in the train. I didn't buy a Ukrainian SIM card. That was maybe a mistake. But yeah, let's see. That's huge trains load here of the very big facility. That's coal. Of course, all the steel works here, they need huge amounts of coal, and that's coal. That's train cargo or coal for the steel works which are close here. I think it's a steel work. Yeah, that is Akhmetov's steel work. It's Metinvest. That's the biggest oligarch of eastern Ukraine. To my best knowledge, that's his asset. How did they get all these assets? That was part of the privatization in the beginning of the 90s. It was actually a good idea to have voucher privatization, but as nobody had money, obviously this voucher privatization often led to vouchers being bought out by the few who were the so-called red managers, and they were controlling the sellable, marketable assets, often petroleum or raw material, in the companies. They basically stole it and sold it to the black market. Then they had money. With this money they could buy the vouchers of the employees who didn't have money, and then they were suddenly the owner of huge industrial assets. I mean, such industrial assets in the West are owned by shareholders normally, and there are millions of them, often in big case of big industrial assets, because who can really have a billion euro assets? Just few. And then, of course, in Ukraine, you have several of the businessmen who have several of these very big industrial assets as their private property, basically. And then they are worth billions. Yeah, here you see typical Ukrainian villages. That's kind of my impression, that a lot of the villages look exactly like that. It's really still very poor. I think the Ukrainian countryside is the poorest part of Europe in many aspects. Moldova is also very poor. Moldova looks also like that. Kosovo and Bosnia I know very well. It's already much more developed everywhere. This is of course a major task, and that's also some of the policymakers in the EU are afraid of the cost of Ukraine. But I repeat, it's obviously much cheaper than to have war. And it's the task of the EU to help, to integrate, to have regional development. And that's what we do. That's what we can do, even when, honestly, it is of course difficult. From Albania to Mariupol, from Elbasan to Mariupol, it's not easy. And it's costly. And that's why I always say, let's budget 2% of the EU, the GDP for the EU, because we have these tasks. We have this task and we know how to do it, but the legacy of communism is not easily erased and overcome in just 30 years. Yeah? I was actually thinking that I'm now already 30 years. My first trip to Serbia, that was my first big trip. I was also at the break during the army in the Czech Republic. Yeah, that was in '89. On a weekend. I was also in Hungary, but that was my first big major trip, important also in a function, was with in '92 at the student protest in spring in Serbia. And that was, I think it's called Kocher. It was my friend. He was leading the small expedition. We were the two. We were also bringing financial support to the students from the Austrian Student Union. That was really in this 9th of March protest and the aftermath, where the students were protesting against Milosevic. Okay, we could not topple him as much as I would have loved to do that. But anyhow, this is now 30 years of me traveling for democracy in Eastern Europe, and now I'm first time in Mariupol. I think that's now the outskirts. It's 500,000 people here in Mariupol, and I think many people live still in abject poverty. And that's what we can change with our Western European, Austrian SME development model: federalism, regional development authorities, self-governance of the regions in the field of economics, good budget for economic development on the regional level, and also competition between the region for investments, for the land use, for the authority to do things in their own region. This is all what is needed in order to develop countries. And that's I think the industrial, look how big that is. What the Soviet Union obviously did in the 1920s, end of the 20s, Stalin, when he took the full power, he was having then this first industrialization of 28 to 32, and that was exchanging the life of the people and their fruit of their labor for industrialization. So he was killing a lot of people in Ukraine and Kazakhstan especially, and he was selling the grain, and then he was building all these basically war machines. And these are all heavy industry for tank production and artillery production. And so he prepared for the Second World War, a war he always wanted to have, and he got it. And he manipulated the rest of the world in getting it, because he wanted to destroy the capitalist world. If you don't believe my words, read history yourself. It is exactly what he built, and all these Zaporozhye, Dnipro, and Mariupol industrial assets are basically part of the preparation for the Second World War, to destroy the capitalist world with the help of their own tools, of the heavy industry tools of, for example, this steelwork. Yeah. And yeah, so is the history of Ukraine, and Germany and Austria is very intertwined, because later, for example, Austria was then heavily industrialized after the Anschluss, in order to have also the preparation for exactly this confrontation with communism. That was the mega industrialization of Germany and Austria on the one hand side, and the Soviet Union on the other, to prepare for the big tank battles which later took place from Kursk to Stalingrad, and from all these terrible places, no, not terrible places, but terrible events in the terrible history of the 20th century. Now we are a different Europe. Now we are the Europe of peace, secured by NATO, united, and we are coming in peaceful mission, and Ukraine wants to join us, and we are very well advised to help Ukraine to join and to be part of this peaceful project of unification of Europe in the rights of the people, the human rights, the property rights, and a decent way to live. Because I show you, it's very good now. You can. This is exactly what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you how the living conditions of the Ukrainian suburbs, villages here in the periphery. Look, they have, of course, streets, and there is infrastructure in terms of energy. That was what Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union was bringing. Of course, the Soviet industrialization was much more successful than the fake copy. Look, here's a sports field, yeah. And you see these huge amounts of industrial plants. When you know, for example, Linz and whatever, also the Rhine area with these huge industrial assets of BASF, and then you see that's basically, you can always say which was the answer to home, but these huge industrial war machines, they are meant for exactly that. And then the poverty is the result of the bad policy. Look under which conditions the people live in 22 here in Mariupol and along the railway station. And here in the shadow of this, really as far as your eye reaches, you have these industrial assets, this Akhmetov Metinvest steel company. It's not, I think the size is even several times bigger than the first in Linz. I don't know how big it is ultimately, I have to check, but it's impressive. There is no doubt this is one of the biggest industrial assets in Ukraine. I think it's also Zaporozhye is maybe bigger, and in Dnipro they have, of course, the rocket factories and also steel companies. And all this, of course, it's very convenient location, because you have the access to the sea, you have the railway access, you have the energy access, you have all the things steel companies and steel factories need. And that's why this logistical situation here at the Black Sea is so important, and that's why also the Bosporus and the Straits are so important, because all these producers they have, which are not directly transformed in tanks, they have to reach the world markets, and the world market has to bring things to such a big sites. And of course you need the port to have that, and the access to the world seas via the straits. Yeah, it's really big. It's the first time for me to be in Mariupol, so I'm also excited to show it to you and to learn about Mariupol and these amazing assets of Stalin's legacy of industrialization of the 1930s. But never forget, each of this asset was bought with millions of Ukrainian lives. Actually, it was often American engineers, yeah, because there was the economic crisis in America, and the engineers, they had also very big industrial sites in America. The geography was similar, and they have then brought to these engineering offices from America, and the money came from the dead Ukrainians, from the Ukraine sold, and from the Holodomor, and then they built these huge sites. And there's also this, and Ukraine especially was the target of this industrialization, because You can build along the Dnieper, you can build the energy sites, the dams basically, that gives the energy, the electric energy, and then you build, according to, you have also the logistic possibilities to build the big river ports, and then you add the steel company or the chemical company or the rocket industrial company, the tank company, and that was the logical place to do it. And then they have, of course, also a lot of this in Russia and also in Siberia and all these places. But look, it's about 1/3 of the Soviet, I was told when I was working here, 1/3 of the Soviet industry was, the arms industry was inherited on the territory of Ukraine by Ukraine. Now it's a bit less because the most heavily industrialized part is the Donbass, the occupied Donbass. But you see also Mariupol is very much industrialized. Why it is? Because this Donbass is close to the Black Sea, and you have, it's basically the Ruhr. It's a copy of the German Ruhr area, of the Saar and Ruhr. That's basically a coal basin. So we are basically, all this is in the underground is big coal, and the coal gives the energy it's you need for steel, and this was basically the pumping industrial heart of the Soviet Union. The whole area here, from east of Dnieper until Donbass, Rostov, that's now in Russia, and of course Donetsk and Luhansk, which are also now part of this Russian occupied Donbass. Yeah, it's a sunny day. We will have very good videos and very good photos here from Mariupol, and I think we are closing in. And I showed you the poverty, the industry, the reality. Don't make anything up, you don't have to trust my word. Just see how life is here in 2022. The waste collection, the environmental damage, the poverty, the big legacy of Soviet industrialization and what to do about it, the reality of the social, economic, industrial, environmental situation. It's a big task. Ukraine in the EU is a generational task, not only for development consultants like me, but for DG Environment, for DG ECFIN, for DG Budget, for the whole of the European system will be in demand to bring Ukraine to the level of Poland. Yeah, but it was possible for Croatia. Also in Croatia there's still a lot of war-torn houses, don't worry. And also in Bulgaria and Romania there's a lot of poverty. So we know exactly how that is. We know exactly what to do. We know exactly how long it takes. We have all the regulatory, financial and other means. Oh, I saw the Black Sea. Wow. This is not my first time in the Black Sea, I said already, but this is my first time today in the Black Sea. So over there, I think we are rolling into Mariupol. And yes, exactly. Even the seaside is so poor. I thought at least the seaside will be more developed. But I think I made it to Mariupol. I think this is already the port. We are on time. This is really working perfectly. This is the status of the railway here. Yes. By the way, privatize your railway 49%, Mr. Zelensky. Very good idea. Sell it to the EIB. Even better idea. If you unite the railway system with the European railway system and join the transport community for Southeastern Europe. Also good ideas. Mariupol, I made it here. Mariupol, did you see? I'm so happy. Good. Thanks a lot for listening. More to come from Mariupol. Bye.